Manchester City are in a hole, and they're about to have the two biggest days of their season. The day Omar Marmoush makes his Man City debut, and the day they realise he is not going to save them. See, Omar Marmoush isn't the player you think he is, and I've watched endless amounts of Frankfurt to decipher who really is the Egyptian prince. Now, he is able to be effective in both channels, with this example of him occupying that right-sided centre-back, faking going in behind so that when he does receive the ball, his first touch can go against the momentum of the defender and drive into that right-hand channel. He then delivers an early cross across the face of the box and gets an assist for the second goal of the game. And on the left-hand side, he drops wide outside of the opposition's block and drives into the box around here. Not too wide, although to stunt his angle for a shot, but not too central in order for it to become too compact. He does hold onto the ball a little too long, something that Pep Guardiola would want to stamp out of his wingers, and is part of the reason why I don't think he'll be utilised out wide. That first assist shows he's far more effective starting more narrow, occupying this outside centre-back, creating that separation, so when he does receive the ball with his back to play, he can use his touch then to drive into these wider channels, going from in to out rather than out to in, where he potentially could walk himself into those compact, tight, low blocks of the Premier League. Another example here of him starting centrally, creating that separation from the back line so he can pick the ball up in space, and then shimmying towards those wider areas and delivering early crosses in this sort of zone here. So if Marmoush isn't going to be used out wide, then many people will begin to compare him with Julian Alvarez, an option to deputise the Norwegian striker. But what if I told you that he's going to be starting alongside Erling Haaland and will replace another Man City player? Well, first, let's look at the Julian Alvarez comparison and see how accurate it really is. As we see here, Marmoush receives the ball with his back to goal, creates that separation from his centre-back once again, shifting to his right-hand side and takes a shot from outside the box. Marmoush is a shot-first striker, always looking to affect the goal in and around the 18-yard box, even more so than Julian Alvarez, as it's reflected in his stats. Their average shot distance shows that they're both shoot-on-sight strikers, rather than a typical poacher playing in conjunction with a player like Erling Haaland. But Marmoush has an extra shot and shot on target per 90 than Julian Alvarez, suggesting that he's even more of a killer in front of goal. Despite their successful take-on percentage being almost identical, Marmoush is attempting almost double the amount of take-ons, and their progressive carry distance isn't that far behind Julian Alvarez in considerably less minutes, which is suggesting that Pep Guardiola isn't just looking for a second striker, but a player that has more creative responsibility deeper than just the 18-yard box. And here's an example of Marmoush taking that responsibility, dropping into the final third, creating that distance to receive the ball to feet, and as it's played over into the final line, he picks the ball up around the halfway line, drives into the Leverkusen final third, picks his head up, and then switches the play to the right-hand side. Or here, where he picks the ball up and drives centrally through the Leverkusen block, using his close control, manufactures himself some space to release a shot. I think he hits the post from this distance. Now, it's important to remember the title of this video. I don't think Omar Marmoush is the answer for Man City, despite all of the brilliant aspects of his game. But before I tell you why, I'm going to tell you the player that he's going to replace in this Man City team, because he isn't going to play instead of Haaland. He'll be playing with him. And to do that, the player that has to make way is Kevin De Bruyne. Out of possession, Kevin De Bruyne is is in that first line of pressure, alongside Erling Haaland in Man City's 4-4-2, which often can adapt to a 4-1-4-1. But when City do regain possession and look to play the ball into Erling Haaland, look at the position De Bruyne automatically takes due to his positioning out of possession. Or here, when Man City look to build through the thirds, finding Foden deeper into the pitch, who finds Kevin De Bruyne, who with his first touch moves away from the defender into the space, who just can't find that pass in behind for the left back. Right now, Manchester City are operating with this 5 occupying a usual back 4, trying to create that overload in the last line, and Foden and De Bruyne are occupying the pockets. But for me, Omar Marmoush can replace Kevin De Bruyne and be more effective in these areas. We've already seen how he can occupy a centre-back, create that separation for himself away from the defensive line, and then move outwards into these areas here. And it's important to remember that these early crosses diagonal to the 18-yard box are prime Kevin De Bruyne spaces that Omar Marmoush also thrives in. Now, replacing the oldest player in the 11 with a new signing is nothing new, but it's important to acknowledge that Kevin De Bruyne is declining physically. And with Pep Guardiola giving an interview recently about physicality and intensity being the key for upcoming Premier League teams to compete at the very highest level, it feels like Kevin De Bruyne doesn't fit with this new shift in the league. And simply having Omar Marmoush in the spaces that Kevin De Bruyne currently occupies in will give City an extra dimension, not only having that secondary striking instinct alongside Erling Haaland to add an extra threat, not only in the box, but also in deeper areas to have more creative responsibility. But this goal versus Bayern is an example of something Kevin De Bruyne just doesn't give you. As the ball breaks for Frankfurt, Marmoush initially comes slightly shorter, looking to receive the ball to feet, but as it's driven through the middle, he notices that space in behind the Bayern back line and starts his run early across the defender's shoulder on his blind side and exploits that big space behind the Bayern back line. And using his pace and his strength, he holds off the defender and scores a brilliant goal past the Bayern keeper. That extra threat in behind high lines in the Premier League, mixed with the gravity that Erling Haaland can have on centre-backs if he does start to drop deep and pick up the ball, alongside City's tendency nowadays to use third man combinations, often going long with the goalkeeper at times, trying to find Haaland or Foden's feet. That extra threat in behind is just another weapon City can use to break defences. So in short, Omar Marmoush, unlike his Egyptian king, isn't a winger. He's far too good with his back to goal along the 18-yard box with a striking instinct like no one else in Europe. Too good to be operating out wide when he's better in the pockets, linking up play with the players around him, with his technical ability that feels like a step above the Bundesliga and could easily fit into a Pep Guardiola system. But the problem is, Man City don't need more goals. Their problem right now is control. And although Omar Marmoush, despite his slightly lacking defensive stats, will add an extra bit of energy in that first line of pressure, I don't believe it's enough to re-energize the midfield of City, give them their desire to defend again, and shut up shop in this middle third of the pitch. What Man City need right now is control in the centre of the park, but the problem they have is they have the best defensive midfielder on the books, but he's injured. You can't buy the next best thing when they're going to be displaced in no less than 6 months. Maybe having Marmoush in these pockets, in the half spaces, will allow a player like De Bruyne to drop deeper alongside Kovacic to dictate the tempo and the rhythm of the game so that City can have control in possession. And having a player like De Bruyne in deeper areas with his excellent passing range, mixed with an Egyptian prince who's constantly looking to find passing lanes between the lines to receive on the half turn, to face the back line, with an Erling Haaland looking to get in behind, potentially that's the idea. I don't know, and only Pep Guardiola really knows. But the only thing I can tell you is, although Omar Marmoush will bring a lot to Manchester City, he isn't going to fix them. Man City might look like they're trying to spend their way out of this hole, but for this problem in this season, for me, Pep Guardiola will have to coach his way out of it, because Omar Marmoush is not the answer.